Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 182. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
All right. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. And there's a docket in the description beneath the video, and we will get started. Also, just as a note, we did feature last night on Venice, uh, Rain and Women's Hangout. So if you have not checked out that interview with Complex and myself, please check that out. I'll drop the link in the chat so that you all can check that out. And make sure you all make sure you also subscribe to Rain and Woman because um, she has supported our channel. It's only right that we do her as well.
Yes, thank you, Rainy Women. We appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
All right. So first item on the docket is from Yahoo News. Sony's next PlayStation will be powered by AMD. So before the resurgence of advanced micro devices, CPU business driven by the Ryzen line in PCs and its EPIC processors for servers, the company wasn't doing well. AMD posted annual losses from 2012 through 2016. Its previous generation of products was exceptionally poor compared to Intel's offerings, and the company's market share reflected that fact. During those dark years, game consoles helped keep AMD afloat. Both Sony's and Sony's PlayStation 4 and Microsoft's Xbox One are powered by AMD CPUs and GPUs. The revenue from nearly 140 million game consoles uh, bought AMD enough time to stage a comeback. And those consoles will continue to be an important part of AMD's business. In an exclusive interview with Wired, Mark Cerny, the lead and system architect for Sony's next generation game console, unveiled the first details of the successor to the PlayStation 4. AMD hardware is front and center. The next generation hardware that Sony chose AMD to power its this new console isn't all that surprising. Backward compatibility with PS4 games is a desirable feature, one that PS4 didn't have with the PS3 games due to an architectural switch. The PS3 was powered by a custom chip based on the uncommon cell architecture, vastly different from the vastly different than the chips that power PCs and the current generation of game consoles. Sticking with AMD also makes life easier for game developers who won't need to deal with an entirely new type of system. The new console will feature a chip with an 8-core CPU based on AMD's upcoming third generation Ryzen's line of Ryzen line of processors, which use the company's Zen 2 architecture, like the soon to be released Ryzen 3000 series. The chip will be built on 7 nanometer manufacturing process. The GPU will be a custom version of AMD's Radeon Navi GPU, which is also set to launch this year. Somewhat surprisingly, the console will support ray tracing. This could mean that AMD's custom GPU or even all Navi GPUs have some specialized ray tracing hardware on board. NVIDIA's RTX series of graphics cards are capable of ray tracing due to the cores designed for the computational intensive task. Um, this is good news if you're invested into AMD. I've talked about AMD many times on here last summer that they were going to be a breakout on the stock market because of all of the trajectory that has happened right now. Because they locked down the game consoles between Microsoft and Sony. Their server CPUs are dominating everything right now. Intel has a manufacturing issue that won't be completed or won't be refined until at least December of this year, and they've had that problem for over a year now. So AMD's stock is going to go up, up and up. At one point when we were having these hangouts, the stock had reached something like $48 or $49, up from like $1.15 or in 2015 or 2016. So what we're seeing now is the resurgence of a 40-year-old startup. Plus, crypto mining has, although crypto mining has slowed down, it's actually still beneficial for AMD.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just heard some news about Intel dropping out of the 5G for mobile space. Um,
Really?
yeah, their CEO was saying it. Intel rises after saying it will drop out of 5G smartphones. This is from the street. Uh, or CNBC, Intel announces plans to pull out of 5G smartphone market. So whatever their issues, it's affected them really deep.
Yeah,
'Cause-
there's yeah, the CPU is a little bit different than the 5G modems. So the modems or I should say the radios. The radio chips are really a little bit different than the CPUs, but there definitely seems to be a full moon for them. Things are just not going right.
yeah, things are really not going right, and 5G is the future. So for them to be
Hmm.
dropping out of their market, it's something's going on.
Yeah, AMD's really not going to let up either. They're gonna take advantage of all of this stuff,
As
all of these events that's happening right now. So.
as they should. For so long they've been second fiddle. For so long they've been second string, second thought, and now
Mhm.
they have a chance to basically put their foot on the neck of Intel. Uh, they're going to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, so if you're invested into cryptos and crypto mining, this is a good thing for you because that means that the cost of hardware is going to go down significantly because it's going to be mass production. When there's a lot of production, then costs go down. When there's limited supply, the cost is going to go up.
Yeah,
All right, next one is from the Scientific American. Solar energy isn't just for electricity; it can also provide carbon-free heat for a wide variety of industrial processes. That's a pretty big factory there, or plant, I should say. The industrial processes that underpin our global economy, manufacturing, fuel and chemical production, mining, are enormously complex and diverse, but they share one key input. They, as well as many others, require heat and lots of it, which takes staggering amounts of fuel to produce. Heat and steam generation is critical to the global economy, but it's also an overlooked and growing source of greenhouse gas emissions. The good news is that innovative solar technologies can produce steam at industrial scale, reducing emissions and increasingly cutting costs. And given the current climate outlook, it's urgent that an industry adopt new technologies. Despite enormous progress around the world to ramp up renewables and increase energy efficiency, Global GHG emissions reached an all-time high in 2018. In a report released in January, the Rodham Group found that even though renewable energy installations soared and coal plants shut down, carbon emissions in the U.S. rose sharply last year. Emissions from industry shot up 5.7%, than in any other sector, including transportation and power generation. The authors of the Rodham Group study concluded that despite increased efforts from policymakers and the business to tackle emissions, the industrial sector is still almost entirely ignored. This must change at the global level. Worldwide, industry is responsible for a quarter of total emissions. And while those from transportation and residential segments are trending down, the International Energy Agency (IEA) projects that the projects that industrial emissions will grow some 24% by 2050 as people around the world continue to transition from living off the land to moving to cities and buying and consuming more things. Industrial activity will continue to increase, and the need to reduce corresponding emissions will become all that more urgent. This is just a graph of heat energy outputs and which industries they correspond with. This is a very interesting concept, though. But I would only assume that this is going to be a lot more expensive because you need first of all you need a good location, and number two, those panels that they're going to produce are going to have to be application specific to this. So
Oh, that's a good point. Uh, I didn't think of that. It wouldn't need to be application specific because the type of work it'll be involved in is you're not just simply catching light energy, but
right.
you're adding another layer of I forgot what's what I'm looking for. You add another job to it, so it have to be stronger. The panels have to be stronger, and so forth. Lately, I've been looking at videos concerning solar energy, and solar energy is really catching on. Solar energy because the panels are being less expensive because the manufacturing involved. They manufactured more, and in the past, we went over articles that share the multiple ways you can use solar energy and solar panels. Grow glass greenhouses. I
Hmm.
say all this to say, with the building of this industry, you're starting to see more and more people identify different ways you can use solar panels, not just only to capture the sun's energy for energy slash electricity, but also for different other ways, making solar panels and this type of industry multifaceted, in turn spawning different byproduct businesses and industries from this. So now you have a situation where you are looking at one sustainable energy industry, and that's spawning off other industries that you may not have even thought of or even think of when this industry was first started, which in turn would have a rippling effect. So in the beginning, say like in the beginning, the calculations were, well, if we had solar energy, it would reduce the carbon in the atmosphere by this much. It would reduce this, it would reduce that by this much. But now, since you have other byproduct businesses spawning off this, and people using solar panels as other ways to create energy or do other things, now those numbers go up. which makes this energy even more lucrative.
All right. This next one is from Green Tech Media. How in Invenergy quietly became one of the biggest players in grid storage. After years of flying under the radar, the renewables developer bagged one of the largest utility storage contracts ever. It may be just getting started. It may just be getting started. Sorry. That's a picture of the grid storage right out of shipping containers, and they store the batteries in them. It's not that Invenergy was ever shy about its storage ambitions. The Chicago-based developer, which has built 22,600 watts of megawatts of wind, solar, and natural gas generation, entered the storage market in way back in a big way back in 2015. It's delivered two 31.5 megawatt projects within 6 months of each other, outranking any other batteries installed in the United States that year. Then the company went quiet. A fittingly massive follow-up didn't materialize until earlier this year when Invenergy revealed that it would supply much of utility Arizona Public Service landmark 850 megawatt energy storage procurement, designed to shift its ample solar resource into nighttime capacity. APS enlisted Invenergy to supply a 50 megawatt system under a power purchase agreement, and to build and transfer a portfolio of 140 megawatts connected to APS solar plants. More may follow as details get ironed out. These and few other projects bring Invenergy portfolio of operating or contracted storage to 260 megawatts and 700 megawatt hours. To top it off, Energy Storage Association awarded Invenergy the Outstanding Industry Achievement Award at this week's conference in Phoenix, not far from where the big battery will appear. Green Tech Media sat down with Chris uh, Zaldo, Invenergy's Senior Vice President in a charge of storage development, to hear how the company got to where it is now. I'm not going to read all of this. I think it's interesting to see some, a concept like this take place. If you're really looking at this picture right now, you see that it's just basically a shipping container with batteries inside of it, connected to all of these renewable energy sources. And from what it looks like in the picture, I would guesstimate there's probably about 36 of those uh, grid storage containers. So
That's pretty simple, straightforward, and that can take entire neighborhoods off of a relied archaic centralized systems. I'm saying that right. This is pretty straightforward. We got the wind turbines in the background, and that's not the only way of renewable energy, but they store it. They had it could be that power could be dumped on the grid at nighttime when we all know when we all say in the past that that's really the hours when you need it. But that's straightforward. Storage containers with batteries in it connected to a grid. That's pretty straightforward.
now you take blockchain and then you add crypto tokens to it, and now you have your own microgrid and ways to compensate people, and as well as manage the billing aspect of consumption.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah, because it's you always have that updated ledger on who uses what and who contributed back to the grid, or what areas need more power. So you will have that efficiency built into it.
Hmm.
That's pretty interesting, man.
Yeah, I don't think about it from so much from an American standpoint, but from a an African standpoint, because they have a lot of land that's underutilized. So And how I would approach something like that is by actually putting the containers underground rather than to leave them up top. Now, the reason why I say this is that I worked in data centers, so I know what it's like to stack, to have multi-storied or multi-tiered um, rack spaces set up. So you can actually scale up if you dig down, if that makes any sense.
Now, would be that be the only reason to put them on the ground to scale up?
Yes, because if you can dig underground, right, one thing is you protect it from any external influences from Mother Nature, for one, and number two, um, you're actually you're not actually taking up a whole lot of the land. You're actually utilizing the underground storage for while preserving the top of the land, if that makes any sense. So you can actually put more things on top.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. And wouldn't that
Yeah.
act like a natural security for nefarious actors? If they want to damage your infrastructure, then they have to get access to it because it's on their land. To me, that sounds like it'll be harder to damage it.
hmm
I
Yeah, I
see.
would say so. What the hell? All right, this next one is from Inverse.com. How CRISPR gene editing trials on humans were finally approved in the United States. In the wake of CRISPR controversy, American scientists forge ahead cautiously. For years, we have speculated about the promise that CRISPR, a gene editing tool that can precisely change DNA sequences, holds holds to treat human disease. This week, our high expectations were put on the test. On Wednesday, reports confirmed that the United States embarked on a new clinical trial using CRISPR to treat human cancer patients, the first of many more to come. CRISPR is a powerful, controversial tool, in part because it's unclear how safe and reliable it is, partially because it can be used to create genetic changes that are passed down through generations. If used in germline cells like eggs and sperm, in general, it functions like a word processor's cut and paste function, cutting out specific chunks of DNA that researchers can replace with new sequences. In this way, it can allow scientists to remove cancer-causing mutations from DNA and replace it with immune-boosting DNA sequences, which is what the University of Pennsylvania scientists are doing in their new trial. As NPR reported, the team used CRISPR to genetically engineer the immune cells of two cancer patients, one suffering from multiple um, myeloma and another form of sarcoma. According to clinical trial documentation, their goal is to engineer samples of T cells, immune system cells, from each patient using CRISPR to delete one gene and add another, giving the patient's immune systems new tools to fight the cancer in their bodies. The trial is a landmark moment for the U.S. It isn't, however, the first time CRISPR has been used in humans. To the horror of the international genetics community, in late 2018, the Chinese scientist He Jinkao used CRISPR to edit human embryos, hoping to make twin girls resistant to HIV. Many clinical trials using CRISPR on cancer cells have happened in China and have and a few have began in Europe and in Canada. The new clinical trial was very different from the experiments done so far. The intention behind the trial was proceed ethically and carefully into the realm of testing CRISPR in human cancer patients. And it is it is already paving a path for many more trials like it in the United States. So basically, this is interesting because this isn't typically my field. I know that Nicole Ali actually is an expert in this. Well, I shouldn't say she's an expert, but she works in this field. And my thinking here is that they're basically playing doctor with the genes. You know, I don't know if you ever remember that game, Doctor from Milton Bradley. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. When you touch it wrong, you get buzzed.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know what you're talking
let me
about.
find an image of it.
I don't know too much about it, but some of the videos I read, the limited videos I saw and I read, was this can have long-lasting effects in terms of, hey, yes, you may have got rid of this, but it may cause something else. Just like in the two girls that are resistant to HIV, they may be more susceptible to something else. And what about their offspring in the future? So that's what I know
Hmm.
about it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's the game I was talking about before there was social media. That goes back to 1965, man. Damn. Yeah, my take on gene editing or genomics is that I think you're going to see a whole lot more artificial intelligence and machine learning aspect taking place in this, as well as blockchain. Because what happens here is the information that is gathered, the bioinformation that is gathered, or bioinformatics for that matter, that is gathered, would be then put onto a, or could also be put onto a blockchain that can actually parse out patient information, but actually put all the right information on it that another lab or open source community might want, and then you can use machine learning to actually dig into it and start pinpointing people based on their ethnicity and so on and so forth, demographics, location, geolocation, things like that. It could actually make it a lot easier to make assessments in this field.
That's where some companies are doing now with the ancestry.
Yep.
That's what they're doing now. Whereas you don't particularly say, like, you don't want to partake in it, but we're related. If I partake in it, and enough of the people that are being related to us partake in it, they will know your a general ballpark idea of your gene sequencing based on the people you are related to, them taking it. So even though you don't want to take it, they'll still, after a certain time, they'll still have the information they want about you.
Hmm. Yeah, a whole lot can come out of it. You can monetize this sort of data as well if you're an institution. But if you can play right with the with HIPAA laws and things of that nature, high trust is another one. If you can play well with not GDPR, but high trust and HIPAA, you can actually monetize that sort of information. There's a whole lot of that can come out of that. So
Yeah, yeah, because they know what you're more susceptible to, or not not in terms of, oh, this person's more susceptible to heart disease. Not just that, but this person is more susceptible to sleeping longer. You know,
right.
running fast,
Mm-hmm.
those things, and they can monetize those.
Mm-hmm. All right, this next one is from BusinessInsider.com. We'll be eating the first CRISPR foods within 5 years, according to a uh, geneticist who helped invent the blockbuster gene editing tool. I don't know how I feel about this, but while others debate the applications of blockbuster gene editing tool CRISPR in human healthcare, an inventor of the tool believes it has a more immediate application, improving our food. Quote, I think in the next 5 years, the most profound thing we'll see in terms of CRISPR effects on food, on people's everyday lives will be in the agricultural sector. Jennifer Doudna, the University of California, Berkeley geneticist who unearthed CRISPR in early experiments with bacteria in 2012. CRISPR has dozens of potential uses, from treating diseases like sickle cell to certain inherited forms of blindness. The tool recently made headlines in a scientist when a scientist in China reportedly used it to edit the DNA of a pair of twin baby girls. Then there are CRISPR's practical applications, the kinds of things we might expect to see in places like grocery stores and farms or farmers' fields within a decade, according to Doudna. CRISPR's appeal in food is straightforward. It's cheaper and easier than traditional breeding methods, including those that are used to make genetically modified crops, also known as GMOs currently. It's also much more precise, where traditional breeding methods hack away at a crop's genome with a dull blade. Tools like CRISPR slice and reshape with a scalpel-like precision. Want a mushroom that doesn't brown, a corn crop that yields more food per acre? Both already exist, though they haven't yet made it to consumer plates. What about a strawberry with a longer shelf life, or tomatoes that do a better job of staying on the vine? Work on CRISPR produce has been more ongoing about a half a decade, but but it's only recently that U.S. regulators have created a viable path for CRISPR products to come to market. Back in 2016, researchers at Penn State used CRISPR to make mushrooms that don't brown. Last spring, gene editing startup Pairwise scored $125 million from agricultural giant Monsanto to work on CRISPR produced with the goal of getting it in grocery stores within the decade. A month later, Stefan Jensen, the chief of the plant physiology department in Sweden's Umeå University, grew and ate the world's first CRISPR kale. Hmm. This is um this is interesting. And again, I kind of go back to what I was saying before about using artificial intelligence and machine learning, or deep learning for that matter, and putting a lot of this information up on scalable databases.
I remember at the I think that was CES, the food
Mhm.
about the White Castle burgers they were using. It wasn't GMO food. It was food that was already out there, but they were making it in a way that you eat a green burger, not the color green, but you know,
Mm.
that I remember that. So this is like the next step. So like it's like the article said, they're going with the world's population booming within the next few decades. The planet can only hold so many amount of people with the resource with the way we're taking up resources now. That includes food. So
Mhm.
like the article said, what we're doing now with GMO is like a dull knife, but with this CRISPR project, it's more of a straightforward slice here, slice there that makes a banana not go brown quickly. It makes an apple um, so, grow bigger or redder or stay ripe longer. So that's what I see. This at.
Mhm. I equate this to something like network masking, right? So in the IT world, when we want to break down a subnet, we can take IPs and kind of break them down per octet. And octet is what you see in between the dots, the three numbers that you see in between the dots. Um, so basically, your network address on your computer right now could actually be modified to add more networks if need be. Taking out a bad uh, um, a bad IP address that's in the pool itself. So in the IT world, we got millions, if not close to billions of IP addresses now with IP version 6. Well, I equate that to CRISPR as well, that you can take out bad IPs and add in new segments if you need be, um, in order to get better network performance as well as more security and scalability. So I see the value in this.
Cool.
All right, this one is from physicist.org. New method to detect off-target effects of CRISPR. Since the CRISPR genome editing technology was invented in 2012, it has shown great promise to treat a number of intractable diseases. However, scientists have struggled to identify potential off-target effects in the therapeutically relevant cell types, which remains the main barrier to moving therapies to the clinic. Now, a group of scientists at the Gladstone Institute and the Innovative Genomics Institute, IGI, with collaborations at AstraZeneca, have developed a reliable method to do just that. CRISPR edits a person's genome by cutting the DNA at a specific location. The challenge is to ensure the tool doesn't also make cuts elsewhere along the DNA, damage referred to as off-target effects, which could have unforeseen consequences. In a study to be published tomorrow in the journal Science, the two first authors, uh, Beek Weiner and Stasia Wyman, found a new way to approach the problem. When CRISPR when CRISPR makes a cut, the DNA is broken, says Weiner, PhD, who began the work in Jacob E. Korn's IGI laboratory and who is now a postdoctoral scholar in Bruce R. Conklin's laboratory at Gladstone. So, in order to survive, the cell recruits many different DNA repair factors to that particular site in the genome to fix the break and join the cut ends back together. We thought if we could find the locations of these DNA repair factors, we could identify the sites that have been cut by CRISPR. To test their idea, the researchers studied a panel of different DNA repair factors. They found that one of them, called MRE11, is one of the first responders to the site of the cut. Using MRE11, the scientists developed a new technique named Discover Sec or Discover Sec that can identify the exact sites in the genome where a cut has been made by CRISPR. The human genome is extremely large. If you printed it, if you printed the entire DNA sequence, you would end up with a novel as tall as a 16-story building, explains Conklin, MD, a senior investigator at Gladstone and deputy director at IGI. When we want to cut DNA with CRISPR, it's like we're trying to remove one specific word on a particular page in that novel. You can think of the DNA repair factors as different types of bookmarks added to the book, Conklin has. While some may bookmark in an entire chapter, MRE11 is bookmark that drills down to the exact letter that has been changed. Different methods currently exist to detect CRISPR off-target effects. However, they come with limitations that range from producing false positive results to killing the cells they are examining. In addition, the most common methods used to date is currently limited to being used in culture in cultured cells in the laboratory, excluding its use in patient-derived stem cells or animal tissue. This is interesting. What caught my eye about this was that the amount of information that comes um, uh, from one DNA, if I remember correctly, about the size of a 16-story building. So what I'm thinking here is that's a lot to put into a database. That's a whole lot of information that needs to be traversed.
That's amazing. One human DNA equals that. That's a lot of information. And for and they're talking about not this program, but different programs talking about cutting here, cutting there. They make it sound more when they say when that's said, it sounds like it's just a dip here, a step there. You'll be good, but not telling us, well, if you printed it out and then you, it's going to be as tall as this. That's a lot of information where you just want to snip here, snip there. So if this is going to be done, there has to be ways to say, hey, to automatically identify and well, to automatically identify this is a location, this is it, instead of just, I'm not saying other people are doing this, but blindly cutting it. It has to be highly, highly scientific, highly, highly effective before you can just say, "Hey, well, we're going to implement this next week Tuesday." No, this is very important that this type of advancement is um, instituted.
Hmm. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, one of the things that it's one of the things that I'm thinking in my head is that, and I wish Nicole Ali was here that she can actually partake in something like this because this is her field of expertise. Is how many times can they replicate a sequence like this? Is it per person? Is it per demographic? I'm curious to know how they can go about doing this and without, um, I guess, without hurting a group of people, right? I mean, if you're talking about Africans in particular, what if you want the strongest, you know, um, African male or something like that, or something like that? I mean, because we know that black women, by and large, tend to have bigger butts, bigger hips, more developed. Same thing for black men. The reason why they dominate in the NBA is because they're very unique, right? To a lot of height, a lot of muscle mass, and high agility and things like that. I'd be interested in knowing how they go about, looking at something like that, looking at someone's DNA sequence in that regard.
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Hmm.
And let's say they want to put that into other people. Is it that simple to just replicate and input, copy and paste? Or
Right.
will it have long-term effects? Well, these people are not genetically like this, and now you're putting in this new genetic code. You may not get what you um, trying to breed. So now that you have not gotten what you bred, what do you do with that person? You know,
Hmm. Right. This is probably going to be beneficial when they start talking about putting humans on other planets. Um, You're gonna need the right all the right DNA in order for a human being to survive. But how do you even know all that unless you actually run the models um, through some form of pilot scheme or something like that? That stuff has to be tested out pretty early. You have to test a theory first, right? You have to actually put your hypothesis in and then test your theory out. But how do you test the theory? But it seems to me that CRISPR is actually aiding in this whole entire of theory testing.
Yeah, I would imagine if you want to see which persons have particular genes that will be advantageous to going to other planets, you would do it in a more intra-racial type of way because those genes may not, those genes may kill or be highly detrimental to another race. So let's say black people, you may take, oh, okay, you have East/Central Africans, and they have this thing, but West Africans have this. So you would do a more of an intra-racial type of thing where, yes, we still have the base genetic makeup, body structure, and so forth, but you're combining the best of that race in order to be to survive on in its planet, in its terrain, or with other races. I would imagine it would start that way, but
Hmm.
that's just my opinion because no, this is not my field. But again, this is very interesting.
Hmm. Let me share my screen real quick because I think this might be relevant to people as well. So I found this coincidentally when I was building the docket. This introduction to CRISPR program. It's a certificate class. It's self-paced, kind of like the stuff you see from EDX. It's from the Jackson Laboratory. And basically, like it says here, I'm just going to read it out. The introduction to CRISPR-Cas9 and CRELOC's technology certificate program includes two mini courses that each provide a basic overview of the genetic tool and how to use it to generate new mouse models. Each course is self-paced and takes 3 to 5 hours to complete. Basics of CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR is one of the most important developments in genome engineering in recent years. The mini course is designed to help the learner gain a basic introductory understanding of utilizing CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology in order to manipulate a gene interest, gene of interest. The CRELOC's technology and mouse modeling. The mini course provides an overview of the basic principles of CRELOC system to genetically engineer mice for human disease modeling. It outlines breeding strategies to create different types of mouse modeling models and details how to navigate the JAX Cree repository. You can claim a program completion certificate for completing all the mini courses in this program. You can also receive digital badges and course completion certificates for each of the mini courses you complete. This program is designed to meet the needs of a graduate or postdoctoral students, research assistants, advanced undergraduate students, and advanced animal care technicians. Um, and you can sign up for this. It sounds like it's free. It says it right here. It's free. Who knew, right?
That's awesome. That's really awesome
Yeah,
that you
definitely. Let
can,
me drop that in the chat for people.
man, you can get a certification in that. That's next level. That's like
Yeah,
that
it is.
is differentiating yourself from regular common folk. You know what I mean? Because that that is so much out there, man. It's and I don't mean to sound like a hippie, but that's man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I wish Nicole was here. Maybe she could speak more to something like that. But I see this being one of those fourth industrial opportunities that a lot of people need to get up on or
It
looking forward to
is.
listening to this.
So if you like, I mean, that's if that's your area where you are excited to learn or you want to know more, that you have a thirst for knowledge in this area, there you go, man. There you go.
me share my screen real quick before we move on. I'm looking on Indeed right now, and this is a search for CRISPR. Um, I just want to also put this out there that Massachusetts is the number one state in the country, or in the West. You know, this includes the United Kingdom, Canada, and everything else in terms of life sciences. So we are heavily invested into, or this state is actually heavily invested into genomics. So and that involves CRISPR. I work in life sciences myself, in cybersecurity. So I'm right smack dead in the middle of all of this right now. So, and the company I work for is actually a startup that just got bought out. But I'm looking at all of this right now. CRISPR Therapeutics. This is all in Cambridge. That's why I brought this up. It's in Boston, Cambridge, clinical trial associate. There's all types of jobs on here, and I'm just kind of running through this really quick. That comes out of all of this. Um, Most of the jobs are starting at 50 grand. You can't beat that.
That's the median household income for America right now, 50 grand. And you're starting out that, wow. Yeah, like I said, this is how
Now
that
you.
this is next level.
Hmm. Now let me do a quick search on EDX real quick, and so I can pull up some more information for you guys. 'Cause that's what we do here, right? Let's see. What are we working with here?
Oh, let's say genomics data analyst. That's wow.
Oh yeah,
Harvard,
that's from Harvard. Yep.
man, jump on that, jump on it. Then see, it's funny because you get in other shows or in other social environments, you get guys or your peers say, "Yeah, go and do that, bro. Go and do that." Here we say, "Man, jump on this. Look, you go to edX and do this and do that. Yes, do that, do it, do it." We're encouraging you. I don't know. I hear a lot of people say, "Well, I'm not encouraged to succeed." We're encouraging you. Look at this essential of genomics and biomedical information. Man,
And the class already started last week, so um, let me just run through this real quick before we go on to the next piece. This course presents clinicians and digital health enthusiasts with an overview of the data revolution in medicine and how to explore it for research and in the clinic. The course will not make you a informatician. I forget how they pronounce that. Informatician. The course make you a, will not make you a bioinformatician, but will introduce the main concepts, tools, algorithms, and databases in this field. How much is this course? So the course is 12 weeks long, 2 to 3 hours a week of effort is put in, and it's free. So let me go over the syllabus real quick. Methods used to obtain medical data, analysis of biological molecules such as DNA, RNA, and proteins using various computational tools from the field of bioinformatics, use of machine learning, I mentioned that earlier, and artificial intelligence, I mentioned that earlier, tools to mine the huge databases of medical information accumulated in the electronic medical records, the web, and numerous data science projects in medicine. I talked about all that stuff earlier about how big a database you're really going to need for something like this, and how blockchain could actually come into this. So I was really on the money about that. Um, analysis of complex interaction networks between DNA, RNA, practical applications in the clinic and personalized medicine research, and the use of cutting edge technology to improve health. What you'll learn, the scientific basis, concepts, and language needed to communicate effectively with bioinformaticians, statisticians, and data scientists. First-hand experience in computational analysis in the practical sessions. An opportunity to conduct your own basic research. Sufficient background to enable further studies, research, and training towards a career in this field. So I'll drop that in the chat for you guys as well, because I know some people who may watch the replay may want to see this.
Man, that's the move right there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just like a whole lot of dope stuff happening all at once, and the class has already started, so you're already late. But if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready, right?
Right.
Mhm. All right, let me move on to the next one because we've got a whole lot of time to do all this. All right, this one is from MedCityNews.com. It's not about what blockchain can do in healthcare, but what it's already doing. Much of the focus on blockchain in healthcare and biopharma has been on the theoretical, what the technology could potentially do and where it could potentially be applied. But increasingly, the focus is shifting from potential to reality. Real world applications of blockchain in healthcare, not just what it can do, but what it is doing, will be the topic of a panel discussion at the upcoming MedCity Invest conference taking place April 23rd in Chicago, I know, with KKH Advisors CEO Kimberly Ha as a moderator. The panel will bring together Health 2047 Managing Director Charles Unger, Vice President for Medical and Regulatory Affairs at drug maker Behringer, Ingleheim's Canadian division, Yuli Brodell, and Emblema, head of blockchain consortium, Alexis Noman. A timely example of blockchain's implementation came last week when Emblema, based in New York, announced it would work with the government of Armenia for an effort to use blockchain to modernize digital healthcare in the country. The aim is to offer physicians their better access to health data while connecting Armenia to international research, particularly in areas like oncology, immunotherapy, and molecular medicine or molecular medicine. I think it's the first proof of concept of using blockchain at the national level, Wah said in phone interview. But numerous efforts have taken place in the private sector as well. At the annual Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society conference in February, Behringer, Ingelheim, and IBM announced a partnership that they said would mark blockchain's first use in clinical trials in Canada. In particular, the U.S. technology giant and German drug maker said they would test whether blockchain can provide a decentralized framework to enable data integrity, um, provenance and transparency and patient empowerment, along with automation of processes for clinical trials. The partnership's aim is to improve trial quality and patient safety, given that given that current processes are often seen as inadequate, leading to erroneous trial records that threaten safety and interpretability. Realistically, now for blockchain's application in realistically for now, blockchain's application in clinical trials will likely be in post-marketing phase 4 studies, as opposed to earlier trials used for proof of concept or regulatory approval. Wah said, Wah added. For the time being, a number of questions remain that Wah and Onga said they would like to see brought up in the panel. One, Onga said, is what are the benefits people are seeing from using blockchain? Everybody asks that question all the time. Nobody gives a really good answer, he said in the phone interview. Additional questions include whether the blockchain platform is being built for the betterment of the patient or organization, whether whether it is whether it truly has privacy, and how to get past the marketing hype. He said. The other question is who regulates it? Should it be government or should it be someone else? He said. See, this is something that I have been talking about for quite some time, and I think anti gravity and myself have been talking about blockchain, and I think Lionel, you may have been in on those conversations about how this is HIPAA compliant, and part of the justification for not adopting blockchains because it was not HIPAA compliant, right? In order for you to be HIPAA compliant, there has to be some form of centralization of the electronic medical record, because someone has to be an owner or a custodian. And in blockchain world, everything is decentralized, so therefore there's no actual custodian. So that's where the problems are, and I think this article is actually touching on this of what I was saying about a year or so ago, that blockchain adoption in and in the healthcare field is really difficult in the United States because you have all these regulatory standards that you have to practice and abide by, and if you can't abide by it, then the technology is kind of useless.
Yeah, I do remember those conversations. And this specifically, I think this can be really beneficial in the VA. For those veterans that's listening, we all know how irritating, and it's on the same level as the public sector, but in the VA, you would think that since there are so few major VAs, VA medical centers out there, not specifically the satellites, even though it should encompass the satellites also, but you would think that they would talk to each other, but they don't. And when you go to another VA, they ask you all these series of questions that you have to answer all over and over and over again. Of well,
Mm-hmm.
who was your last doctor? What did they do? You know, and you think to yourself, well, it should be in the record. You're the VA, but it don't. And transfer back to the public sector, that should be the same way because not hospitals talk to each other because a lot of hospitals are privately owned, but that person should have control of their records. That person should, um, okay, hey, yeah, you can look at my records.
Well, that goes back to you, right? So in order for that to happen, you have to sign off on it. But that's where smart contracts come in,
Hmm.
right? So typically with an EMR, if you want to go outside of the network, you have to actually sign a waiver and so on and so forth, and then they have to physically hand you a sealed docket with your transcripts in there, and only then can you actually walk out with it. And in blockchain, this would actually work if there was some form of, and again, this goes back to centralizing ownership. Someone has to be responsible. But like the article was saying, who's going to own it? Somebody has to own something. It just can't be, you know, anonymous. It can't be anonymous. It can't be that way. Not with the regulatory practices and guidelines and standards that's in place with HIPAA and high trust and those other things. You can't do that. So either there has to be a government cloud that allows the transfer of that EMR from one practice from the VA to a private practice somewhere else, and it passes through that cloud and it gets in that government cloud, and then it passes down to the next institution that you're trying to go to, and then they can receive it on the other end by decrypting it through another uh, um, public key.
Hmm.
If that
But
makes any sense to you, Lino, my
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah,
offering.
right. It does make sense. It beats the current state of affairs where well, you have to. It's it's murky. It's cumbersome. So
Hmm.
when you do go to another provider, they you how am I trying to say this? You do okay them to download your information from the cloud or this central location, but by using what you said, a public key and so forth to do it, it does make it easier. It does make it less cumbersome. It does make it see uh, what is in effect now. Oh, I can't remember the word I'm looking for. It off puts people. It's so much work just to do the paperwork that you say, well, no, I'm not going to put up with that. But with this, it makes it easier. And so for you are making it easier for people to decide to go to see their physician or their provider because of this easier way of doing things. And I agree with you. You really can't have people that control their own information because people lose things. That's just human behavior. We just lose things. We don't know where we put it. We lost the password. We forgot the key. I can't remember my email um,
Hmm.
password. So you do have to have like that default centralization where, okay, even if something happens, it's always recoverable.
Well, it also needs to be portable, right? Which is a part of the standard, right? So if I let's say if I want to go to multiple different institutions, private and public, that want to run analysis on me, if I want to get a second or third opinion, I have to take my medical history with me, my medical records with me. Well, how do all of those institutions talk to each other if it's decentralized? Unless they buy into the network itself, right? By becoming their own nodes, right? There's a variety of things there are a variety of questions that have to be answered in terms of blockchain and healthcare. I think IBM probably has done extensive research on this, but when we talk about this stuff, we really don't have an answer like like the article is discussing that. It sounds good in marketing, but where's the real answer to the questions that we have, right?
Hmm.
That's where guys like you come in, with your blockchain expertise and your knowledge, and you can kind of break that down. Um, Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of black men that's involved in the blockchain. So when we try to have these conversations, we're kind of talking to each other, but we're not talking, amongst others.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with you. It does need to be portable because you do you are influenced to have other consultations on whatever you ails you.
Hmm.
But now you have to gather your information and take it there. And a lot of times these hospitals kind of prevent you from doing that some type of way. You know what I mean? So
To lock you into their network so that you don't go anywhere, you keep paying them money.
right. So it's like, wow, I can't even have a second opinion. So if you're in control of your record some type of way, then that makes it easier. And to me, I believe that makes it more inviting for people to look after their health because it's easy to do so. It's not as cumbersome or feel like you're being punished because you want to go somewhere else.
Hmm. All right, this next one is from CoinDesk.com. Digital assets smart contract language now works on Hyperledger blockchains. This should be good. Enterprise blockchain firm Digital Asset is integrating its smart contract modeling language into the Hyperledger Sawtooth framework. Announced Tuesday, this is the first meddling or the first melding of code between a project under the umbrella of the 200-member Hyperledger Consortium and DA's digital asset modeling language, DAML, opening up the latter to a wider range of industries and prospective enterprise customers. The news also makes the third DA partnership since DAML became open source earlier this month. Last week, DA announced the language would be integrated into the blockchain platform of Dell Computer, controlled software giant VMware, as well as highlighting work being done with the International Swaps and Derivatives Association, ISDA, to bring DA software within the ambit of ISDA's common domain model. Dan O'Prey, CMO at Digital Asset, who is also chair of the Hyperledger Marketing Committee, said there are several reasons DA chose Sawtooth contributed to Hyperledger by Intel as first point of integration for demo. Sawtooth has been getting a lot of traction in markets outside of what has initially been our core focus, financial services, and particularly market infrastructures. So this is a great way for us to expand the reach of Damo into other industries. Indeed, Sawtooth is the locus of interesting projects such as Grid, announced last year, a supply chain focused effort being driven by food giant Cargill. More broadly, Sawtooth is the second largest blockchain within Hyperledger in terms of developer firepower and enterprise backing, after Fabric, developed by IBM. Another key reason is that DA has been working closely with blockchain technology partners, which offers developers an easy to deploy and cloud ready instance for Sawtooth via its blockchain management platform, Sextant. In July of this year, BTP will offer an enhanced version of Sextant with Damo support on Amazon Web Services (AWS) with other cloud providers soon thereafter. Man, this is we just talked about this the other day, like right, Lana?
Man, this certification is going to be fire. I was going to send this out through the emails, but just reading my email about it. In the post, Digital Asset revealed that it has begun working with Hyperledger members, blockchain technical partners, or BTP, in order to integrate the Digital Asset Modeling Language, or DAML, runtime with Hyperledger Sawtooth, which is a modular platform for building, deploying, and running distributed ledgers like blockchains. So we just talked about how blockchains can be used in order to efficiently to make industries efficient. Now, mind you, blockchains are not used for every industry, but those that are is useful for certifications such as the SAL2 certification, Hyperledger certification can allow you to be on the front line, cutting edge, bleeding edge of technologies that these companies that who are going to use these technologies in order to make their industry or business more efficient. You can have a chance to get in on it, and also applying smart contracts to it, now you're making the certification more multifaceted and more able to do other
or
things. Huh?
or DApps.
Right, right. So this is a hot. This is gonna be a hot certification.
Yeah, and definitely we're going to talk about this next week as well for a blockchain hangout. on Saturday. So for Black Tech Talk.
Man, that's awesome. Now it's because it seems like whatever advancements these crypto blockchains are doing, they're applying them to the, how should I say this? The other sectors, like the business sectors. So now, you have smart contracts in the crypto sector, but now they're applying it to the business sector, the company sector. Whatever new technology is going to be developed in the crypto sector, they're going to apply that to the business sector and apply that to like a continuous educating, continuous um, recertification of these certificates.
Mhm. All right, this next one is from BGR.com. NASA sent mice into space, and the results are unintentionally hilarious. At some at some point in the not so distant future, NASA and other space groups around the world will begin embarking on manned missions deeper into our solar system than our species has ever gone before. That means long journeys and extended stays in microgravity for the astronauts who embark on them, and that could pose a problem. Thanks to the International Space Station, we know quite a bit about the effects of low gravity on the human body. But NASA wants to learn more. To that end, the agency has been studying how other species deal with low gravity, specifically focusing on mice. The results the results are equal parts interesting and humorous. As NASA explains in a new blog post, scientists sent a specifically designed a specially designed mouse habitat module to the International Space Station, along with some of the furry little rodents. The 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 enclosure allowed researchers to study behavior of the mice remotely from Earth via video feeds, and now we get to enjoy those videos for ourselves. Um, I find this to be very interesting. For those of you in the chat, you should be really looking at this.
I saw a little bit of that. I didn't see enough to find out the funny parts. Um, yeah, look at the video, man. Um, not too many times do you get reports like this from science articles that say this is funny. But I'm gonna definitely look at the video. Uh, that's all I really gotta say about
Well,
this
they
one. But
don't.
yeah,
It's not. It, yeah, I don't think they meant it to be ha ha funny, but it's interesting that the mice don't have a clue that there is no gravity, right? Whereas humans, you kind of go into it understanding that there's not going to be there's going to be low gravity or no gravity at all. But for them, it's almost like they don't even acknowledge that there's no gravity.
wow.
They don't even acknowledge it.
That's interesting.
And what it
Yeah.
sounds like to me is that what it looks like to me is that they're trying to adapt to the lack of gravity too, right? So they're running around in circles, but they're trying to adapt to it. If you look at the way the mice are trying to grip um, the um, the wire, the chicken wire that's on in the cage itself.
That's an interesting take on it. I'm gonna look at this video.
Mhm. All right, let me get to the next one. All right, next one is from spacenews.com. Independent report concludes 2033 human Mars mission is not feasible. An independent report concluded that NASA has no chance of sending humans to Mars by 2033, with the earliest uh, such a mission could be flown being in the late 2030s. The report, while completed prior to March 26 speech, where Vice President Mike Pence directed NASA to return humans to the moon by 2024, does offer insights into how much a lunar return might cost and how it fits into the long-term plans to send humans to Mars. NASA contracted with the Space and Technology Policy Institute (STPI) to prepare a report, which Congress directed NASA to perform in 2017 NASA Authorization Act. That bill called specifically for a technical and financial assessment of a Mars human space flight mission to be launched in 2033. STPI, at NASA's direction, used the strategy the agency had laid out in its exploration campaign report, which projects the continued use of Space Launch System and Orion and development of the Lunar Gateway in the 2020s. That would be followed by the Deep Space Transport, a crew spacecraft that would travel from uh, cislunar space to Mars and back. NASA would also develop lunar landers. Or NASA would also develop lunar landers are related system to support crewed missions to the lunar space, while also working on systems for later missions to the surface of Mars. That work, the SCI report concluded, will take will take too long to complete in the times to support a 2033 mission. Quote, we find that even without budget constraints, a Mars 2033 orbital mission cannot be realistically scheduled under NASA's current and notional plans, the report states. Our, an- our analysis suggests that a Mars orbital mission could be carried out no earlier than the 2037 orbital window without accepting large technology development, schedule delay, cost overrun, and budget shortfall risk. That schedule is driven by the technology risk associated in particular with the deep space transport, including life support systems and propulsion that require long lead times. A mission to Mars launching in 2033, the report concluded, would need to have critical technologies tested by 2022, which is unlikely. Moving ahead with completing those technologies first, the report stated, will dramatically increase technology and schedule risk for the DST and could force DST design to be revised if any one of those technology testing programs reveals problems. So you get a guy in a suit and tie like VP Mike Pence who thinks that, oh yeah, we should be able to get there by 2024. Are you kidding me? That stuff takes decades to actually plan out. Like, it's not that easy. You can't
This
even
is
get the VA to transfer
it's
medical
funny why
records
you
from
say
one
that.
VA hospital to another one. You got the audacity to ask them to go to Mars by 2024. You're a yo-yo.
Uh, and then it's send the medical records back. Oh my God, why you say that?
Yeah.
This is exciting to me though. Yeah, going to Mars. Yeah, I agree with you. This takes a lot of planning. This is nothing you can say. Yeah, by the year after next, we're gonna be ready. Now, this takes a lot of planning because it takes 6 months to a year to get there. Then on top of
Well,
that,
well, well, wait a
uh-huh.
second. Wait a second. Didn't they get to the moon in the 1960s? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I wasn't born in. I'll fall back on. I wasn't born in the '60s, so but
Oh,
you,
really?
this takes a long time to plan. This is not just something you could just say, "Hey, this is this and this is that." We're going to be there by 2 o'clock, 2025. This takes a long time to plan. You got to think about redundancy systems. You got to think. You got to train. the people who are going to go extensive training because they're going to be up there or out there for between 6 months to a year, and then the window, because you're going to want the shortest window, which is about 6 months, 6 to 9 months. That only comes around every so often. So now you're saying, well, we're gonna meet that window, and it's such and such. We're gonna do it. You kind of rushing things, and that's not a good thing to do in these type of situations because something happens, you SOL. There's not going to be a backup mission to say, hey, they're stuck out there. We're going to go survive. Well, go rescue them. You really got to make sure things is on point.
To me, that's not. To me, the whole Mars mission thing is not. It's not something that's a one nation project. That's a multi nation project. That means that has to have all sort of input involved in that. You can't just do that by yourself. I mean, you could, but you'll have cost overruns, like the article stated, and a lot of technology that hasn't been fully tested. But in order for something like that to take place in such a short amount of time, that would mean like a global effort. That means everybody has to partake in something like that. You would need something like the Star Trek Deep Space Nine ship to carry you to there and back
Mm.
without any sort of failure.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause that man, that's that's not something you just go. Hey, we're taking a weekend trip. The food supplies you gotta test out. You gotta test out, well, how long these food supplies are gonna last, water and so forth. Well, what about what happens when the food supply run out? You gotta have a lot of redundancies, and that means a
To eat the
lot of
mice,
weight.
you have to eat the mice up in space. That's what they're gonna have to do
Now I don't know about that.
if they can if they can catch them while they keep running around.
Yeah,
Hmm. Let me get to this next
yeah,
article.
that's a lot of planning. A lot of planning.
Yep. All right, this next one is from space.com. Mars 2020 rover assembled and tested ahead of launch next year. NASA's next Mars mission is slowly coming together in a clean room in California. Technicians at the agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory assembled the capsule that will keep the Mars 2020 rover secure for its wild ride to the red planet's surface. After leaving Earth next summer, Mars 2020 will spend about 7 months flying towards the red planet before a spectacular entry at its destination, including a repeat of the famous 7 Minute of Terror sequence that brought NASA's Curiosity rover to the planet's surface in 2012. The Mars 2020 rover and Curiosity have similar body frames, although they carry different instruments, so all the parts need to be secure in the Mars 2020 Mars 2020's entry capsule in a process called stacking. Stacking is an important milestone in mission development because, as good as our computer models are, we still need to put it together to show that the bolt holes line up and everything fits together. David Gruhl, Assembly Test and Launch Operations Manager for the Mars 2020 at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said in a statement. It is a great feeling for the entire project when we see the stack sitting there waiting to go for the next part of its journey, which will eventually. Am I still online?
Yeah, you still on.
Yeah, you
Which
you,
will
you there, Mike?
Yeah, which will eventually lead to a launch pad at the Cape Canaveral in July of next year. So, any takes on this complex? What's going on?
I'm good, man. Another day in paradise.
All right.
going on? Mars 2020 rover assembled and tested ahead of launch next year. Now this is what I'm talking about. You gotta make sure it works. That 7 minutes of terror they're talking about is when it reaches Mars atmosphere, and between that point and lands. That's the 7 minutes of terror because there's so much information, so much intricate machinery moving, and one system has to take over just when another system finished doing this job. That to send a signal out there to Mars, it takes a very long time, and you ain't got enough time, so you got to make sure everything works properly, and they're they're gonna test the heck out of this system because it costs so
Mhm.
much, and the it's not like if it fails, okay, we're gonna try next week. It's like, okay, it failed. Now we gotta it's really gonna push things back. So they gotta, no pressure, but get it right on the first time.
Well, there was a Mars mission that did fail. I'm trying to remember which one it was, where the payload
The
basically
ESA.
got there. Yeah, yeah, the ESA mission, and it got there, and basically they couldn't get it online. So what ends up happening is that whatever objectives you had for that mission have to then be stacked into the next mission, right? So you have to kind of reassess your next mission and kind of combine objectives, and it does push that window back, like you said, because you don't just shoot stuff off to Mars, every month or something like that. There's a certain window that you have in order to send things off, and in order for it to hit the right orbit trajectory, in order to get to the part of the planet where you're trying to do your research at. So you only have these estimated time frames, these windows, and sometimes there's like a 1 or 2 year gap in between them. So if you fail on that one, then essentially you're going to have to maybe push back the objectives of that mission and then combine them with the next one that's going to come in, say, another 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that's what they were referring to in the previous article about the next window of opportunity would be 2037 instead of 2033.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. That's a way larger gap. Yeah,
And combining our mission objectives is not. It makes things expensive because you got that much more payload to shoot out from Earth's gravity, and then you got that much more planning and testing and make sure everything works. Which means, like you said, Mike, the other day, you want to make things simple enough for it to work, not intricate and complex for where any small thing will not work. So this these type of missions, it's a lot laying on the line for these type of missions because they need they almost work in order. First we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this. Oh, well, this don't work, so we gotta combine it to this. It just makes things a little bit more hectic.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, Black Cyber Network said in the chat, if they sent 5G to Mars, they might as well walk around without suits with all that radiation. I mean, I guess that might be a joke. It could be taken as a joke. You really wouldn't use 5G in space like that, but you would actually use laser based communications. That would be the trick, right? Of
Right,
how do you get faster communication? Do you use sine waves or do you use squared waves? Um, or do you use a laser? And a laser is the fastest thing that you can get to beam communication back and forth.
right. And that laser technology, specific type of laser technology, but that laser technology is the basis of the interstellar internet network there that they want to build out because as the radio waves dissipates, it gets um, weaker as they go and it gets slower. So it's going to take, if you want to send a signal from Earth to excuse me, to the jovial planets, it's going to take months. But with laser, it'll take a few minutes. Yeah, you'll have that latency issue, but it's way more better than the radio waves. So that not radio waves, that laser technology is the basis of the interstellar internet network that they want to build out in this solar system.
Well, if you pull up the internet on like a do a wiki search on that, the whole expressed like purpose of the internet was to have an intergalactic communication system. That's really what the basis of the internet was for that anyway. So,
True
I
about
guess
that?
yeah, look it up. Yeah. That was the whole point of it. Yeah. Why would you create something as vast as an internet, right? If you weren't going to use it in a manner that could far exceed its limitations here. I mean, think about it,
I
man.
thought it
If
was
it's any,
originally. It was originally. I thought it was. I was under the impression that it was originally for the military, not for interstellar space.
well, like with anything, right? Any sort of game-changing technology will first have its application as far as military application. But the concept behind it was to have an intergalactic communication system. Like if you could literally look this up, that was the whole point of it. But before it gets to that point, it's going to have a military application first, like with anything, any sort of
Okay.
game-changing technology. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do we got any
But
more?
yeah, that's where Q.
Okay, go ahead.
That's where Q-based satellites come in question. What were you going to say?
Oh, was there any other topics on the docket?
Yeah, we still have two or three more topics. So,
All right, Roger that. Roger that.
the Black Cyber Network says, "I wonder how a firewall works for a laser. Um, it doesn't use IP tables, but in that regard, it doesn't matter. Uh, there's only one network up there, anyways. It's not multiple networks, so you don't have to worry about denial of service attacks coming against your network. At least not in the current state it is right now. Plus, the network only works when need be. So you fire up a signal, you send your packets out, and then it shuts down. That's typically how it works. All right, this one is from ScienceNews.org. The M87 black hole image showed the best way to measure black hole masses. Its diameter suggests the black hole is 6.5 billion times the mass of the sun. The measure of a black hole is what it does with its stars. That's one lesson astronomers are taking from the first ever picture of a black hole released on April 10th by an international telescope team. That image confirmed that the mass of the supermassive black hole in the center of galaxy M87 is close to what astronomers expected from how nearby stars orbit, solving a long-standing debate over how best to measure a black hole's mass. The black hole in M87, which is located about 55 million light years from Earth, is the first black hole whose mass has been calculated by three precise methods: measuring the motion of the stars, the swirl of surrounding gases, and now, thanks to the Event Horizon Telescope imaging project, the diameter of the black hole's shadow. In 1978, the first mass estimates to track the motions of stars whipping around the great gravitational center found that the stars must be orbiting something containing about 5 billion times the mass of the sun. A more precise estimate in 2011 using similar stellar techniques bumped its heft up to 6.6 billion times the mass of the sun. Meanwhile, astronomers in 1994 made another estimate by tracing how gases closer to the back to the black hole than the than the stars swirl around the behemoth. That technique suggested that the black hole was 2.4 billion solar masses, which was revised in 2013 to 3.5 billion solar masses. For years, it wasn't clear which technique got closer to the truth. Hmm. Lionel, what do you know about black holes and this whole entire article? Like I have an idea of how this affects us, but then again, I just want to hear your opinion on this.
All right. Well, the galaxy that they observed is from M87 and it's Messier 87. It a black hole condenses matter into a very small amount of space. So all that light, all the planets and stars, other stars it sucks up because they're at the center of the universe. It condenses all of that material down into a very, very small amount of space. That's why it's very dense. And
Mm-hmm.
light is so strong, its gravitational pull is so strong that lights cannot escape it. So when they took this picture, first they linked up a lot of satellites around the world that make to construct a say a planet-wide satellite, not satellite. What's the one I'm looking for? Telescope. The light they didn't take a picture of a black hole per se, but the light that they were able to capture outlined the black hole. So that's how they were able to take the picture of a black hole. And it's the first ever picture of a black hole. So all those pictures that you see, on the internet are not actual black hole. They're artists rendering. And
Mm-hmm.
the black hole that's on that movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, that's the closest. That was the closest. Well, in hindsight, that's the closest artist rendering of a black hole because they actually did bring on scientists to help them with that. But if you look at that black hole and this black hole, it's very similar. But that's what the
Mm-hmm.
black hole is in a nutshell.
Complex, you have anything you want to add to that?
I do, but neighbor just started cutting grass, man. I don't want to.
All
Give
right.
me a second.
Uh, all right.
Now, what were your thoughts on it?
Oh no, my initial thoughts was basically, just don't go down that street.
Oh no, no, no!
We don't
You
have
are
to
not
worry too
leaving.
much. Go the
That's a
opposite way.
wrap. Oh man, you better go around.
Mean YouTube streets, boy.
Yeah, but it's black holes are at the center of the universe, not the universe, galaxies, and even this galaxy, the galaxy we're in, Milky Way galaxy, we have a black hole at the center of it. But this black hole that
Mm-hmm.
we at the other galaxy is bigger. Um, I forgot. I think I've heard it how wide it is, like from one point to another. These things are huge. Um, these things are absolutely monstrous. Like you do not want to be nowhere close, nowhere near these things. Because if you get caught in this gravitational pull, you're gonna get pulled like a spaghetti string, and you'll die long before it's gonna be excruciatingly painful. As a matter of fact, there's debate on if you even feel it because it's gonna be so quick and harsh. And man, these things are not none to be messed. These are real alphas. If I were to say that, these are nothing to be played with.
What do you call them?
These are the real alphas. You know, they they do their work. They don't say nothing. They don't brag. They just they are. These things are massive, man. These things are absolute. They don't play no games. It's
They're the
crazy.
real select men.
Yeah, and
You guys,
they
okay, you guys really.
uh, they they do the selecting, man. These man, black holes are huge.
Hmm. Damiete has a question in the chat. He says, "What do you guys know about uh, graviton waves that were detected?"
I'm not that well versed in astrophysics. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a little bit above my pay grade, to be honest. I will have to look into it. Yeah, I will have to look into it.
yeah, definitely have to do some research on that. Either that, or we have to watch. We got to binge watch The Expanse.
Oh yeah, yeah, I love the expanse. I love the expanse.
All right, last one on the docket from CGTN.com. China's Link Space successfully launches reusable rocket to a new height. This is a picture of the rocket. China's private rocket company, Link Space, successfully launched a reusable rocket in East China's Shandong province on Friday. The ROV T5 rocket flew to a height of 40 meters and then safely landed in 30 seconds. On March 27th, the company finished its first low altitude launch at a height of 20 meters. Whenever the term reusable rocket is mentioned, people would at once link it to the U.S. giants like SpaceX and Blue Origin. Now, China's Link Space is hoping to make its presence felt in the market. Founded in 2014, Link Space is engaged in the development of reusable rockets and liquid rocket engine technology. The ROV T5 rocket was put into production in May 2018. The 8.1-meter high rocket has a takeoff weight of 1.5 tons and uses 5 liquid rocket engines in parallel to get off the ground. Currently, Link Space's 20-member team has started the research and development of a suborbital reusable rocket named RLVT-6. It is expected that the final assembly of the new rocket will be completed by the end of this year. The company's first small commercial rocket, New Line 1, will target the microsatellite launch market and is scheduled to make its maiden flight around 2021. So we talked about this stuff many times before. We've had hangouts about this. Um, One in every 3 startups is going to be a space startup. We talked about micro or cube satellites, is what they typically called, the standardized term for it. And we've talked about 3D printed rockets and rocket development, right? This is an example of what we've been talking about. Um, the company was founded in 2014 and they are a 20-man team. Okay, this is a startup. And their first um, maiden flight will be launched around 2021. So 7 years after they've already started up, um, they're just now getting their first maiden flight or maiden launch, I should say. So I'm saying all that to say this: that this is what's going on right now on the ground. This is happening in real time. We're not just talking about this. We're not just posting this article so that you know for shits and giggles or for the sake of passing time. This is happening right now in our face. A 20-man team is that started in 2014, right when the manosphere was going through their you know trials and tribulations about dating. These guys are building rockets. Go right ahead, Complex.
Dude, I was gonna say something extremely snarky, but I'm gonna try to let's keep it serious.
Right, right. But the point that I'm making here is you got a 20-man team. You got rockets being built, started in 2014. First made in flight taking place in 2021. 7-year startup. I've talked about this on this channel before that startups. This is my fourth startup that I'm working at right now, but startups typically take a long time to get off the ground. 6 months of just brainstorming, and then another 6 months of or 3 to 6 months of planning, 3 to 6 months of trial and error, another 6 months of pre-production, and then you go through your funding phases. This is typically the cycle. So 7 years is not uncommon. Most companies fail within their first year, but for tech startups, this is exactly what the cycle is like. And you're talking a 20-man team. So this type of stuff can be done by black men. So we can sit up here and debate about, you know, all these other extremities, that you hear on these 8-hour hangouts and these 7-hour hangouts talking about nothing. We could actually be putting in some serious work on something like this, and that's why we decided. That's why we decided last year to start holding hangouts based on space and technology, because this was something that we discovered uh, that could actually be feasible. We can actually speak truth to power on.
Mike, we need women to sign off on this first. Sorry, I had to
Hmm.
say it. But okay, but it's exactly what you said. 20-man team. You and I know, we know the nature of startups. I contract for one right now.
Hmm.
I've been a part of the creation of a few. I've had a couple
Hmm.
myself. You and I, we understand, and there's brothers that are listening in on this. We all understand the nature of startup culture. Okay, this isn't about the fast buck. It's about the goal. It's about the long-term objective. Okay, startup is one phase. Everything started as a startup. Even your companies that are 120 years old, 200 years old, at one point in time, they were all startups. Okay, so a 20-man team launching rockets. Look, I've seen more than 20 guys chime in on a fucking 8-hour hangout.
Well,
I'm
the
just
hangouts
saying,
only
like
have
let's compare and
the
contrast.
panels only hold 10 people.
Well, they rotate it out though. That's the thing. Over the course of, of 8 hours, maybe like 25 to 30 have rotated in and out. This is all I'm saying. All of them have a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of they have a lot to say about something that doesn't really produce any sort of results. Okay, but
Hmm.
20 guys, right, that have an objective to go into space. Look, you see you see what you get. You see what you get.
Yeah, this is interesting. Seven took about what, six, almost 6, 7 years to get these things off the ground with,
They're not even turning profit.
right. And but they still went at it. You have consistent ways of getting, basically they knew they weren't going to turn profit, and they said, you know what, even though we know that we're going to we're going to make this a win by proving and doing this, and they did it.
Hmm. And the thing about startups is that, especially if you're putting in sweat equity, you might have to eat ramen noodles for a few months, if not a year. You
But
you
isn't
might
that part
have
of
to
it,
eat
Mike?
hot dogs. Yeah,
Isn't that part of startup
yeah,
culture though?
yeah. You may have to eat a Snickers bar. Hungry, why wait? So that's going to come with the territory. I don't think a lot of black men really understand what sweat equity is about. Everybody wants the instant gratification. When I was doing undergrad, um, guys used to sign up for the IT program and think that, oh man, I'm gonna make $100,000 and be the next Bill Gates and this and that, and that never happened. The guys who had that mentality, they were the first ones to fail, the first ones to drop out, the first ones to get disciplinary suspension from school because of failing grades and stuff like that. So those guys never really had the wherewithal to really maintain participation in that sort of industry. And the ones who did, we
I
made
was
it
gonna
out
say,
pretty well.
buckle at the first sign of. I would say buckle at the first sign of that adversity.
hmm hmm Right. And when it's time to actually put the chips down, those guys are just about money up front. Everybody wants to get paid up front. And it's like, no, you actually may have to put up 10 G's for this. You may have to put up 5 G's for this. That's a
Mhm.
part of the sweat equity.
But
You can't just come in here and think that, well,
I was
oh
gonna say,
man,
Mike.
uh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, no, go, Mike. Finish, finish.
There's a lot of echo coming for you. So what I was saying is that a lot of these guys think that, oh man, I gotta get my money up front. I gotta get paid right now. They don't realize, a few of these companies that are famous, Facebook for example, has been a startup for the last 10 years. They didn't start turning profit until what, last year or the year before last? I think like 2016 or something like that. So YouTube only recently started turning profit, and they've been around since 2005, 2006. So my point in saying this is that startup culture is not fun. It's not meant to be fun. It's meant to be um, for those who are dedicated and have a vested interest in seeing things go from from the womb to the tomb, if that makes any sense. To see it all the way through completion or failure. Many startups fail all the time. It's not uncommon to see, to read stories about a guy who had 4 or 5 failed startups, and then he get that one opportunity, and his startup, gets off the ground. It's just one of those. That's just one of those things. That's the nature of the industry. Failed startups, not because the guys were incompetent, but just it was just the wrong timing.
As they say, persistence pays off. You know, and
hmm
the thing about it is too is that there's the larger payoff when the chips that you have to cash in are of the sweat equity variety. This is how when you're okay, you got to look at like Amazon's beginnings, humble beginnings, and you look at just look up Google Jeff Bezos, Google his office back in 1997, and just take a look at that picture of his office. Okay,
hmm
I'm pretty sure in his mind he knew where his idea could go, right? But when you look at that picture, it doesn't reflect what was in his head. Today reflects what was in his head, right? And he has the billions to show for it. So there's a methodology behind seeing a startup through its various phases into a mature company. Okay, even some of your biggest transportation companies, which are Uber, Lyft, those types of companies, these are by definition startups. Okay, they're not turning a profit, but look at what they're valued at because there's potential in it. So we got to understand sort of like the intrinsic elements and the intrinsic nature of game changing technology, right? That's rolled out in the form of startups because they're not mature companies. Okay, and because it's a game changing technology, you don't the roadmap hasn't been completely laid out for you. You, as the company who's kind of taking on blazing this path, you have to largely terraform that. You're the one who has to do it. So there's a lot of higher costs involved. There's a higher potential losses involved, and you have to be okay with sustaining those in order to obtain the larger goal at hand. and it's in some regards it's a lifelong commitment,
Hmm.
or at least you're going to commit, or at least you're going to commit a sizable portion of your time and your energy for the next what 10, 15, 20 years even. Okay, so that means that during that time, in order to really see it through, you got to cut out and weed out all the bullshit.
Hmm. Lionel, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, no.
Yeah. Yeah. My thoughts on that is on what you just said is actually I agree with you definitely. Although I haven't been around the the aerospace industry at all. I've only been around most of the deep tech space, cloud computing and cybersecurity and uh, other forms of networking and stuff like that. Seeing those companies get off the ground and watching venture capitalists, watching these guys cash checks from venture capitalists worth one, two, three, $4 million, and seeing them do it in real time in the last few years has pushed me to work a little
Mm-hmm.
bit harder. Um, on getting my own stuff together. No longer working for other people, and stop looking at things as jobs, and look at it more as an opportunity. Um, not just to better myself, but to actually advance into this advance and competing in this sort of industry. Um, I think what happens with a lot of times in the African American community is that we are a consumer class of people, right? We only consume everything. We don't actually drive the technology or drive the products that we consume. Um, we have the next iPhone. Everybody got the latest Apple smartwatch or the next Galaxy, but they're not actually driving the technology that's behind it, the Android software or the um, writing apps for the you know, for the iPhone and things like that. We're not actually driving the technology, and I think that's part of the problem. I had a conversation before we started to hang out with a black person who went to a boot camp, and she was very frustrated that she didn't feel like she was learning anything. She went through Udacity, she went through these various places for boot camps, and I had to explain to her, one, you need a mentor. You need somebody who can evaluate you um, from the outside and kind of get an idea of where you need to go to kind of drive you.
Right.
And
Right.
number two, you need um, to understand what you're trying to get yourself into. What is the purpose of you going to a boot camp? What are you trying to do? Who told you to go to a boot camp, anyways? Boot camp is not really about um, you getting a job. It's really for a certain mindset of person who can absorb that much information in such a short amount of time. You can't go to a boot camp and get frustrated because you don't feel like you're learning anything, or that everybody else is passing you by because you don't understand Boolean operators and integers. It- That's for a certain mindset. We have to stop trying to cut corners and try to take shortcuts to every sort of opportunity that we think is down the road. Um, you probably bought into the hype of, well, if you go to this boot camp, you can come out making $200,000. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. If you have the mindset to be able to adapt and adjust with changes on the fly, yeah, boot camp might work for you. But if you're a slow learner, if you're a visual learner, that a boot camp may not be for you, and you may have to get with somebody and do some one-on-one teachings because you need a lot more attention than most other people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that some people's learning styles are a little bit different.
Aren't boot camps largely to kind of inject like new bits of information into your pre-existing database, and not necessarily to kind of train you on something?
Mhm.
No, I mean, I'm asking that, Mike. I'm asking that question to you.
Repeat that one more time.
Oh, I was gonna say, isn't like a boot camp, right? That would be more for like sort of like giving you a condensed boost in information, right, to supplement what you already have pre-existing, right? Say versus being trained on something which would take actually a lot longer.
Yes, yes. So for some places, some of the other stuff that I've seen, some of these new boot camps that are starting up are actually pay, right? So they'll pay you to go to boot camp if you qualify. I think what happens
Hmm,
sometimes in
okay.
the black community, you have these sort of boot camps that are popping up now for coding, right? These coding boot camps, black girls code and all this other stuff, right? I think what happens here is that someone is giving bad advice to a certain demographic of people, saying, "Well, yeah, you're gonna make this much money, or you can do this, and you can do it. You're this sort of person, regardless of gender, and you can do it." And then they get in there and they go through a bit of a cultural shock because information is passing by too fast. No one really explained anything to them. They're not getting enough attention in the class. Um, they need a you know they thought that because they use Facebook or they use Instagram. Yeah, I know computers. I'm computer literate. But then when you get in front of that coding structure and you start seeing JavaScript and uh, Node.js and HTML5 and things like that. When you see all those lines of code being generated, or that has to be generated, you get overwhelmed and you get frustrated, and that may not be for you. In order for you to be a programmer, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of perseverance to really stick with coding, because that's the nature of it. If you look at most coders, most of them are either bald or they're balding. I don't know any programmers
Right.
who got afros.
I man, not that I'm bald or anything, but that coding, man, I have I I have to go back and re-look at something. I'm like, what? Because I saw, I'm like, what the fuck they talking about? And I'm in the curse. So I have to go back and relearn something like that I just learned. And yeah, it's not straightforward. And even coders that been in it for 20, 25 years say, I still make mistakes.
Hmm.
It's not a Jedi level of coding where once you reach it, you're infallible and make mistakes. There's new iterations that come out. And you just have, it's a continuous learning experience. That's all it is, man. And once you realize that, and once you really get into it, you can roll with the
Hmm.
flow.
Hmm. How long have you been doing this training at, or this classes at Udacity?
Since January. And I tell you what, um, I learned something. I feel like, oh man, I got this. All of a sudden, the next lesson is
Hmm.
like, oh man, you know, I,
Hmm.
I get sit down in my chair, like, sit down, you know, so you got a lot of learning to do.
Hey, we have a
Let me
couple
go.
questions in the chat.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, okay, real quick. One question is, what are your thoughts on forming black tech incubators?
I think that's the move. I think that's the move, and that's something that we had talked about last Saturday about these opportunity zones and what these opportunity zones can offer in terms of investment. One of the things that we have here in Boston is what we call a innovative incubator. I think that's what they call it. I think it was rebranded to something like Wakanda or something like that. But basically, they have um, publicly available. Uh, there's a lot of feedback coming from you, complex. Um, they basically have a 3D print workshop. You can basically go in there and get something 3D printed for yourself. I'm not sure if there's any fee. I'm not really sure about that, but they have 3D printers. They have um, open space for you to work in. So if you wanted to come in there and touch down with a laptop with a few people and hold a meeting or something like that, or use it for like just for coding or something like that, you can actually do that. And there's little workshops and stuff that happens, if you want to learn, if you want to learn like HTML5 or database literacy or something like that, they have that. But I think Black tech incubators have to be funded through social equity programs. We did. I mean, Complex and myself have seen this happen in real time, but with social equity programs in terms of the legalization of marijuana and cannabis, that has shown to have immense return on investment. $8 billion market in California,
Yep.
$10 billion market in Washington and Colorado. So we see that there's necessity behind that. Why aren't we focusing on building up tech incubators through social equity programs in predominantly Black areas? Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, Philly, Boston. Places that have an excess capacity of 75 to 100,000 Black people. We should be focusing on that. We should be dominating in these areas. We should be taking out these abandoned buildings and things like that, turn them into tech incubators and
Incubators, yeah, yep.
Right, and then we don't have to work for anybody, right? We'll build our own startups. We'll get the investment from the federal government, and get a stipend and things like that. That's what we should be focusing on, not well, if I take this boot camp, I'm going to go work for this person. No, we should be trying to build up our own platforms, and then we can compete on a global scale. I was just reading an article about Infosys, how they work with Verizon to Verizon actually laid off all their employees, and they were brought in by Infosys because Verizon outsourced their IT department to Infosys. But what's happening under Trump is that these H-1B visas programs are no longer being accepted. So now Infosys can't hire Indians anymore. They have to hire Americans, and those Americans are going to have to be Black for the most part because of the minority quotas. So there's opportunities out there. Opportunities are coming. Go ahead, Mano.
I'll be straight up with you. I'll learn by doing it by myself, the classes I'm taking. But I know that not only can I learn more, but I'll learn at a more solid pace, learn it with other people. And I say that to say because I'm the type of person I would want to say, hey, we need to challenge ourselves. If you learn something, spread it out and see what else we can do with that new knowledge. Not just okay, we learn something, move on to the next step. Try to have a deeper understanding and have it second nature, where you sit down and you type and you just going at it second nature. It's just muscle memory at that point. I would rather learn like that in a group.
You were gonna say
It's always good to
Complex?
have. Yeah, I was gonna say it's always good to have an end game, right? A goal intended for usage in terms of like what if you're learning a language, yeah, and if you're learning it to like secure a job with someone, then yeah, learn the language in order to carry out the task of any sort of job that you're going for. But if you're looking to develop something, you should start with an idea of what application this is going to serve. What is going to be the purpose that this application is going to serve? When you determine that, then go about writing the language to execute that. Your focus and your intentions for what you're trying to do become direct. It's very clear. But if it's like what Mike was saying, you kind of get this whole, hey, this is the new thing, learn how to code. Okay, great. I'm learning these concepts, but I'm confused by it. Not really sure, even if I learned it, what I'm going to do with it. Right. So kind of start with an idea of where you see this being applied. And then that'll give you, because you'll learn the concepts with an intent behind it, right? So behind what you're learning, it's going to be like, okay, I need to understand this concept because at the end of the day, I want the app to do this. I need to learn this concept because I'm also going to need the app to do this. You know what I mean? So if you have an idea of what you're trying to actually use the coding for, then it becomes a lot easier to learn the coding.
Hmm. Yeah, there's different ways of learning. I think Lionel and myself have had conversations about how much time should you spend studying. Roughly 90 minutes a day. You know, your brain can only absorb so much information at a time, and I think what happens with these coding boot camps is that only one quarter of the people who attend these boot camps are actually going to be productive out of it. It's going to have some kind of return on investment for them, and for the rest of the people, participants in it, you know, that stuff just might go through one ear and out the other or over their head. Uh, Too much information at a time for any human being is going to be devastating for them. It could be very overwhelming. This is typically why most passwords that people put on devices are usually the same, which makes it easier to break into their computers because or their devices because your brain can only sustain so much information at a time. That's why your passwords are always a certain length. Um, Usually, passwords are always less than 10 characters. Usually less than 8, more times than not, and they're usually the same thing over and over and over, and it's always something that they're accustomed to. So when it comes to writing code, it's difficult if you can't retain that information for more than a few sittings, that it becomes useless. So I don't always advise everybody to write code.
Yeah, I agree with you. To give an example of what you said with the no more than 90 minutes thing, when I
Hmm.
listen to these crypto videos and these specific type of words in the beginning were said, I immediately lost. What is he talking about? And after a while, I learned, and now I'm able to listen to more crypto videos because the information is I've heard the information over and over again, but the information is being applied to in another way. That's not to say that I'm able to listen to 3, 4, 5, 8 hours of crypto videos because after a while, the information that I'm going to receive is going to be limited. But I'm able to listen to though that information and retain a lot more of that information opposed to in the beginning I wasn't able to. I may have to listen to a video once or twice, but in the coding with me, the longer I do it, the more I'm going to be able to retain opposed to going to a boot camp and cramming or trying to cram these concepts in a few sittings. It's going to be a lot I'm going to forget, and after a while, excuse me, it's going to be things that it's not going to click mesh opposed to what I'm doing now over a long period of time. It's sinking in more, sinking in deeper.
Yeah, yeah. Repetition is key. I know some people listen to audio books before they go to sleep, so they kind of absorb it more. You were going to say something complex.
No, no, no. I'm sorry. I'm listening. Go ahead.
I believe there was a second question that you had brought up. I didn't catch it.
It was let me see, let me see, let me see. Let me roll back up here. Um, it was I think Black Cyber Network was asking, should he build robots or cars? And I would say, shoot, man, whatever it is that you can build that your technological expertise, like whichever platform you can leverage your expertise in, that's going to be, to me, in any way, that's going to be your quickest line to success.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? And that sounds when I say this, I'm not beating up on what you said. I'm actually agreeing with what you said. But that sounds so cliche when people hear it. It's like, oh man, I want to hear that. But it's so true. Because with me, I gravitated to cryptos. I gravitated to blockchain, and it's not. It don't feel like a burden trying to learn. I gravitated to space exploration because I knew as a child I wanted to be an astronaut. And now with the space exploration is kicking off, I'm like, okay, and I could dust off those old that old want to learn knowledge about this. It doesn't feel like a burden. If I'm scrolling through YouTube and I see a video about some type of space exploration, I'm watching it. If it's 30 minutes long, you know I'm watching it. Opposed to I gotta watch these robot videos. So he's right.
It's
If
not a
you
chore.
want, huh?
It's not a chore.
Right, right. It's not a chore. I want to look at it. I wake up. Okay, what came out today? As opposed to okay, it's 9 o'clock at night. Post. I look at the videos now. Nah, I'm looking at it at a.m. in the morning time.
Hmm. And I think there's a difference between how people are raised versus adults trying to get into it and make a career transition. You know, when I got into computers and electronics and RC racing and stuff like that, I was only 6 or 7 years old. I was working with soldering irons and you know battery jigs and taking out motherboards and having electronic kits and stuff like that from Radio Shack back in the day. So I was all, even though I didn't have a clear understanding of what I was doing, I still had the wherewithal to actually physically access that type of stuff. I was involved in that environment, so that's how we grew up, right? So we got a lot of hand me down stuff, a
Yep.
lot of hand me down computers, Colecos and stuff like that. So it was natural to us. In the same way today, for a toddler, it's natural for them to pick up an iPad and log in and just go straight to YouTube and start watching cat videos and stuff like that. To them, that's natural because that's how they grew up. But if you're an adult and you're past 30, 35, 40 years old, man, and your mind is already cemented in a certain way of thinking, it's going to be difficult for you to go through a coding boot camp or some other sort of IT boot camp to try to make that transition. It's not easy. So you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to get yourself a mentor first, like I said earlier, and you're going to have to let that person evaluate where you are in your mindset and what area is best applicable for you to actually go into. I can tell by listening that Lionel's a software guy. He's very inquisitive. He's always you know reading and things like that. Always and analyzing things. So that's a software thinker's mind or a software analyst's mind, application analyst. Whereas somebody like Damiette, he's more of a hands-on guy. He's a mechanic. He always works with his hands. He has his own tools and stuff like that. The way his mind thinks, it's always to touch something. Whereas for somebody like Lionel, it's actually let me look at something and then I can get it.
Yeah, I will have to agree with that. Yeah, as I do not have no tool. I do not own tools. To be honest, I look at it and I discussed with Mike Grizzly, and
Mm-hmm.
he said this, and I agree with him. Like, yeah, you're right. This I am like that. How he said with coding, because he's a coder, and he would say you have to think about the out, how you want this thing to look. And when I was doing a little project and at the class, the HTML CSS project, I
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to look clean and things. So I had to go to Google, see what codes I had to use to replicate what I wanted it to look like. Then when I did that,
Mm-hmm.
I tinkered with it some more. I'm like, okay, this could be better. So yeah, I have to agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to, Black Cyber Networks does, I think I'll go at robots and drones. Definitely, man. Drone technology. I mean, it's whatever your lane is. I mean, even with vehicles, because that's kind of where my lane is, man. I'm an automotive geek for the most part. If you want to check out Open Motors, that's it. That's basically it's an open source electric vehicle platform. It's like what I based a lot of my designs off of and stuff like that. But it's an open source platform. You can download the 3D blueprints and basically manufacture your own electric vehicle.
Hmm. Yeah, I think when you talk about robotics and autonomous vehicles, there is no either or. It's all encompassing in one. Robotics is just more about the smaller application of mobility. But then when you say autonomous vehicle, well, autonomous vehicle comes out of robotics, so it's
I
all
was gonna say
encompassing
it's
in one.
yeah, yep, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's all encompassing in one. You can't really take one from the other. If you can work on robotics, you can work on autonomous vehicles, and vice versa. And that's why I was saying before that that's a hardware aspect too. There's some software application to it where you have to write you know, the the coding for the vehicle's management system. But for the most part, that's still physical. You still have to put the parts together. You still have to get the parts together. You still have to measure all this stuff out, whether you 3D printing it or you're putting it together by hand. It's still has some physical interaction with it. Guys who are mechanics, guys who can turn a wrench, um, guys who can work on, you can change brakes or a water pump on a car. That's going to be a key transition for you because you're already halfway there. For people who have never worked on cars before, getting into autonomous vehicles and robotics, that's difficult because there's an intimidation factor. Um, when you see all these moving parts and these schematics that laid on the table, you know, that's why you typically see uh, guys who are mechanics. You never like, for example, if you go to a auto mechanic or auto shop and you needed your brakes changed or something like that, you never really ask a guy or a mechanic for that matter, have you ever worked on, you know, Volkswagens? Have you ever worked on the BMW before? Do you know how to change a water pump on a Mercedes? No one asks that question because that's pretty standard for a mechanic. It doesn't matter what brand of vehicle it is. It doesn't matter who made it. It doesn't matter if it's a motorcycle or a lawnmower. They can jump in if they got the right tools. They can jump in there and do whatever is possible or whatever is necessary.
Yeah,
Those
brake
same
master
skill set,
cylinders is. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead,
that same
finish.
skill set is going to be that same skill set is going to be transferable to future applications. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say because a brake master cylinder is a brake master cylinder. It functions the same way no matter what the application is, right? Certain things are uh, their function are they'll just be more elaborate based on the application, but the functionality is the same.
Hmm. All right, let me see if there's anything else in the post before we close out, in the chat before we close out. Andy says, Mike, I think it's all about ego. If you get rid of your ego and open to it, nothing is too late. Oh, I wasn't saying that it's too late. I'm just saying that if a person only spoke English their whole life, what happens when you drop them off in the middle of China and they need to speak Mandarin or Cantonese? It's not going to be easy to pick up that language. I think even Russian, for that matter, Russian language is very difficult to understand um, after a certain amount of time. If you don't, I think Russian language is like 4,500 hours of learning time. That's a quite long. That's quite a bit of a duration to learn a language. So that's all I was saying. It's all about where you are in life and what kind of person you are and how you interpret things. Yeah, Andy says, how about surgical robots? That's already taken place. You could look up GE, Siemens, the German company. They're involved in that. Philips Healthcare. They're already involved in that. Uh, Lamar says, what about black people getting into biomedical engineering and biotech? I don't see why not. I don't see why not.
It's not about one specific area. That's the whole kind of point and premise to a lot of these discussions here, because the technology is it's like it's base technology which can then be applied to specific industries, even sub industries. So that's kind of why I push the narrative of if you're going to learn a certain skill, a code or something like that, have an idea in mind of where specifically you want to take it. Ideally you want to take it in an industry or in an area that you have expertise in, because those areas is where you're going to find a problem, and then you'll be able to think of a solution that you can create for that problem, because you know that industry, that sub industry, you know that environment. So really this could be applicable to anything, truth be told. I mean, we're kind of referencing just space and technology. These are general themes, but when you start to dissect it all, you start to find that there's applications that basically span the industrial scale.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think if you guys are listening, we're gonna have our first Black IT Spring Summit uh, this Saturday coming. So definitely check out that. We're gonna be dropping some game on that. Maybe Keep It Techie will come by. He's an IT guy himself. Christian, one of our other brethren who works in IT, and some other, and maybe get Sub Zero on there as well. Hopefully, we can get him on there since he's very knowledgeable in the database engineering area. So, with that being said, thank you all for joining us, and have a good night.
Peace out, everyone.